Week 2, north-south, we're switching sides here. It's a warm-up drill. Blocking the hip, switching the arms, walking around, switching. Another thing you can throw into here is if they're bringing their knees up especially, this works really good because I'm just going to roll her up. I'm going to put my hand on the shoulder, and as I come to the side, I'm going to lift forward and sit them up for a back take. So that wouldn't work if like bridge, like just lift your hips a tiny bit. If her feet are heavy on the ground, it's going to be hard to lift them up. So it works really good when their knees are in. You come and roll them up on her butt and take the back. So you can add that to your north-south positional warm-up.
Alright, so once I've actually gotten to my north-south position with one hand over the head and one arm in here, a lot of times they're going to use this arm to try to huck me off, and that's great because I can just take this hand that he's trying to push up and go underneath and grab the back of the collar here. Once I have that, I really need to get my hip touching my elbow, otherwise he's just going to bring this arm back and I will no longer have the paper cutter. So I'm going to press my hip to my own elbow, and then I can take my shoulder and put it in this little pocket between his delt and his chest, and that will make me nice and heavy. If I come up too high, sometimes they can just throw me that way. So I want to keep my weight back. And now, a lot of times they'll take this hand and try to defend their neck here. So I can grab it and do an uppercut motion and block it with my head. I'm actually pinching with my face on his hand, and that will often give me enough access to get this collar. As I'm coming down, I can flare my elbow out if I need to. A lot of times just coming down, they'll tap before, but if you need to, you can start flaring out, and I want my weight sinking heavy as I'm doing that. So one more time, I'm in here, he tries to huck me off, I swim this arm under, and even if he doesn't try to huck me off, a lot of times I can use this leg to kind of keep his arm up and out of the way, and just stick my arm in. And once I have that, hip to my elbow, heavy, I can block his hand with my head, grab with the thumb in, fingers out. I can pull this up a little bit to make it a little tighter, and that backhand can tighten as well. This sometimes ends up a little bit throat crushy, but that's kind of part of the paper cutter choke. So this time, I was starting to do the paper cutter, but this hand is being really strong. I'm trying to move it, and maybe he's just way stronger than me and I can't clear that hand out. I can bring my weight over slightly, but I want to make sure my legs are back far enough so that he can't throw me. And then I turn my ankle at a 45, scoop with the elbow underneath his elbow. It's very important here that I pinch his elbow tight right here under my tricep. And I'm basically trying to keep his elbow all the way across my hip. Now I just do a sit through, and I'm keeping that elbow nice and tight, and I can put my leg over it. This is the same mechanics as the scorpion choke that we did last week off of the north-south choke, but this time I'm just a little bit higher up. And same thing, I just lift my hips forward, or the shoulder. Look, it's like an Americana motion with this shoulder. One more time. Here, I can't get the paper cutter, so I'm going to lean across the body a little bit, keeping my legs low, drag the elbow towards his head as I'm switching my hips, keeping this elbow here nice and tight towards my opposite hip, and my back is actually kind of smushing his face a little bit too. Next one, I like to get off of initially starting in side control with the knee staple. And most of you have probably seen the trifecta, where from here we're trying to do Americana, straight arm bar, Kimura. So oftentimes, as I get the Kimura grip, they don't want to let me pick them up. And so instead, I pull and he resists, so I push it down to the mat. It's very important that this hand stays pinned to the mat. I'm gonna use my sternum on the top of his shoulder. So I'm basically gonna push this down with my sternum. And now I'm gonna walk to north-south, dragging his face with my belly or hip bone if you wanna be mean. And then I can place my ribs right on that point of his shoulder, and then it doesn't take very much. So basically, you'll notice if I lift this up, his shoulder wants to come up. But when I push it back down, that makes his arm want to pop up. But since I've already pinned it to the mat, he can't just pop his arm up to relieve that pressure. So the tap is actually coming from the downward pressure on this point on the shoulder.